Fisherman, what is the weirdest/strangest thing you have witnessed at sea? Story 1. A few years ago, I was shark fishing on the fly out of San Diego, specifically for mako sharks. The deal here is to throw out a chum bucket, then kill the engines and let the wind carry you away, leaving the chum line. You go about 7 miles offshore to where the bottom just falls out of the continental shelf and runs away to about 2,000 feet. So we've caught a few blue sharks and jumped one mako, and it's time to go in. We circle back to our chum line, and all of a sudden, I see a fin. I mean a huge fin. This thing is easily sticking 4 feet out of the ocean, and it looks like a kiteboard sail. My fishing partners are all like, da-dun, da-dun. It really looks like Jaws. I point to it, and the guy goes, yep, hammerhead, big one, maybe 16 feet. I give him a look, and he's like, oh, no, not with that 12 weight. You don't stand a chance, and I don't want to bust the rod. I talked him into it anyway. We killed the engine and set up for a crossing shot. This particular fly line has been cut so that the castable portion is only about 65 feet long. This gives more room on the reel for thinner backing, thus increasing your overall capacity. I knew the line was short, but I didn't know exactly how short. I stripped it all off on the deck, stretched it, and got ready for the shot. The shark crossed about 70 feet out, directly across the bow. I laid out a nice cast with essentially an entire dyed red chicken for a fly using the 12 weights. Unfortunately, 2 things went wrong. 1, the shortened line cut the first guide when it tried to shoot through. The knot at the end was big, I remember. And number 2, my shark anatomy is a little sketchy. I aimed about 3 or 4 feet in front of the fin, not realizing how far back the dorsal on a hammerhead really is. End result is the knot casting caused the cast to turn over with force, and I ended up slapping that hammerhead right on the back of the skull. He exploded. It looked like a grenade had gone off, and he immediately dove. We actually got wet from his spray. The foam ring he left when he went down was slightly larger than the 24-foot boat we were in. I don't know enough about the ethics of shark fishing, but I don't particularly love the thought, mostly because I just really like sharks. Frankly, I was cheering for the shark in this story, and I'm sorry it wasn't at least a little scarier of an experience for you. Sorry, but if you make me choose between fishermen and sharks, I'm rooting for sharks every time. Story 2. Fresh off of a tributary on the Trinity in Northern California, but maybe this still counts. I was checking out pools and casting spots with a fishing buddy when I saw crappily hidden pipes running into the river. The rains had exposed these bundled pipes that ran up the mountainside. I knew that these usually led to pumps for outdoor grow operations. Having already stumbled into those fields a few times hiking before, I knew there's a real danger of having a shotgun go off in your face if you're caught by the tenders. The crazy thing was that the pipes were like 4 or 5 1-inch PVCs running at a 70% incline. That is some serious water uptake with massive pumps at the top. Meanwhile, the fields up top have to have thousands of plants. I continued on to my salmon hunt downstream. About an hour or so later at midday, there's the sound of helicopters. Not just 1, but 4 in formation converging on that hill. I'm thinking it's going down. But my bud and I decided to pack up and check out a different river. We're heading back to the parking spot when a naked dude floats by down the river holding onto an empty jug of water like a floaty. He sees us, holds up his finger, and makes the shh sound. I told him there's some serious rapids downstream, and he floats on. Was he a tender who was taking a shower and is now escaping the feds? A run-of-the-mill crazy butt? Ghetto floaty enthusiast? Anyway, later that day, I caught a 32 coho king, released. Pretty sweeties. Story 3. Was fishing off the coast of Mexico on a 3-day sponsored charter boat that had several representatives of the major reel manufacturers on it. The Shimano rep decided to demo a new heavy-duty rig that would rival the Penn International reels that many people loved. He grabs a fat mackerel from the tank, sets up his line, pretty sure he was using something like an 80-pound test, and tosses the line off of the side of the boat as a small crowd watches the demo. The mackerel landed about 60 feet off the side of the boat, floated for a second before getting a second wind, and was subsequently swallowed by something that I can only describe as the Volkswagen of the sea. Nobody saw the entire fish that took the bait. It happened in a flash. The Shimano rep realized he had a huge fish on the line and started tightening the drag to no avail. As we watched, this new Shimano reel was completely spooled off 80-pound test line with absolutely no hesitation. I'm not even sure the fish knew he was hooked, to be honest. Nobody had thought to have a camera rolling, but that poor Shimano representative wasn't the same for the rest of the trip. Every time humans think they have control when they're on the ocean, I'm always ready for the ocean to correct them. Oh, you want to show off your fishing line here in the ocean? Well, let's see just how strong that stuff really is. The ocean is full of surprises, and frankly, a lot of those surprises are things that you might only get to be surprised by once, if you catch my meaning. Story 4. My folks sailed across the Pacific in the mid-70s. They were trailing a lure overnight and reeled it in the early morning to see if they caught a meal. The lure was a pretty big one, and when they pulled it back, it had a strange ring of damage on the surface of the lure. The ring was about 2 inches around. No damage in the center, no damage around it, like someone had a broken bottle and ground it around in a circle for a while. Dad always holds up his hand at this point in the story with his thumb and forefinger touching the universal OK symbol. It was about this big. After a while of trying to figure out what had happened, years, they finally figured out what it was. Squid suction cups have teeth around the edge to help hold on to their prey. Here's the kicker. Squid suction cups are usually side by side in 2 rows on the tentacle, or nearly so. Hold out your 2 hands in 2 OK signs and put them side by side. That's how big around the tentacle of the squid was that was following their sailboat and attacking the lure. Kraken. Story 5. I commercial fish in Alaska. Caught some tuna over Ethster Island 2 years ago. Also caught several tagged sturgeons throughout the year. Saw the biggest meteorite ever. It scared the crap out of me. Thought I was dead for sure. Things were huge. Those videos from Russia that went around a while back reminded me of it. I've seen several whale/porpoises feeding frenzy. Last one was a couple humpbacks. Doll porpoises and false killer whales. It was pretty amazing to see. I've been right up eye to eye with whale sharks, sea lions, etc. When I was younger, I was told by several old-timers that while they were anchored at bay off Isle, they saw what they described as a giant mothership hovered over the bay. Apparently, this was witnessed by lots of other people. When I asked around, it seemed like half said yes, they saw it, and the other half didn't want to talk about it. The sky is very clear at night, out where I fish. That's really the most amazing thing I see out there. Anyways, got a 48-hour opener starting at 7. Gotta go. Story 6. I lived on a boat with my parents as a kid. We were way offshore sailing north. It was nighttime and my mom was manning the wheel. At about 2 a.m., she wakes my dad saying there's a lighthouse. We're in the middle of nowhere with no land or reefs within 1,000 clicks of us. My dad comes up and sees the light and we change course. My sister and I wake up and get on the bow. Even with a change of course that seems to be moving and pulsing, we're pretty freaked out. Either we could be miles off course or about to be abducted. The light continues to appear and disappear all night, stalking us. We never forgot that light. About 2 months ago, my dad figured it out. He found a buoy from a trawler's net on a beach. Must have snapped off and floated out to sea. I also saw a football-sized whirlpool form in the middle of the ocean, had a whale breach under the hull, and attacked my mating turtles. I had an odd childhood. Honestly, I would both love and hate a childhood like that. Like, you wouldn't get to make normal friends and play normally, miss out on various opportunities, but you also get stories like this to tell and experiences no other kid could get. I really don't know if I envy that or not, but hey, as long as you're happy, I'm glad to hear the tales. Story 7. First story. Yesterday, while spear fishing off Pompano Beach, had a 5-foot bull shark follow me the entire time. When I go down survey the reef for fish, I'd catch him stalking me. The closest he got was about 5 to 6 feet from my fins before I noticed. At that instant, I was more than willing to say, "Boss, you got it. All yours. I'm out of here." Second story, a few weeks ago, I was free diving off Hillsborough Beach. Visibility was about 20 to 25 feet, and I was at bottom of a 30-foot drop when I saw a giant shadow looming closer. I was frozen stiff as I crapped my pants waiting to defend myself with a 5-inch dive knife. Within seconds, as it got closer, what I thought was a monster shark turned out to be 12 to 14 feet manatee. He was so curious he got so close so I could touch him. Very playful. We dove for about 15 minutes, even ascending with me to get air, then back down. Hands down, my best diving encounter. All emotion rolled into one. Story 8. Navy here. We were floating around the Atlantic Ocean while on deployment. We were doing what is common on some ships to do on Sunday called a steel beach picnic. Everyone is outside and we're grilling out. It's a day that if you aren't on watch, you can kind of relax and hang out in your civilian clothes. It was a pretty calm day on the water, and I remember it being exceptionally hot. The sounds of the party-like atmosphere started dying down, and you could see people all turning out towards the ocean and looking. Surrounding us in patches was what looked like giant pools of blood. It just appeared suddenly and eventually became less patchy, and everywhere you looked around the ship was this dark red color. The ship kept chugging along and eventually it dissipated. They never said what it was, but I'm assuming it is what is commonly referred to as the red tide. Just a part of nature, I guess, but definitely eerie. Story 9. I lived and worked in the dive shop at an island resort in Fiji for 4 months last year. While going over our neighboring island to visit friends one night, I witnessed bioluminescence, probably one of the most amazing things I've ever seen at sea. It was like bright sparks flying out from under the boat in the water. Also, while snorkeling the reef on the island, I met a tiny yellow pilotfish, the ones that swim in front of sharks. It swam in front of my mask for 45 minutes, and whenever I slowed down or stopped to look at an interesting fish or coral, it would turn around and look at me as if to say, "Come on, keep swimming." It followed me back to the beach, and I sat in the water with it swimming around me for another 20 minutes. It absolutely broke my heart to leave it there, lost with nothing or no one to lead. You missed out on your opportunity to live a life in the ocean as the first human shark. That little pilotfish offered you the chance of a lifetime, and you refused the call. Sure, you would have, ran out of air and probably had a hard time surviving, but those few sweet, let's be generous and say days, you would have been a shark, and what more could a person want? Story 10. I am a seafarer, and when I was still a deck cadet, I saw a huge waterspout about 24 miles away from our ship. This happened in the South China Sea, and it was the biggest waterspout I ever saw. I wonder if it had the capability to suck our ship if we were closer. Another weird thing I saw was a huge carcass of a dead rat floating in the middle of the Korean Strait. A dead man floating off the port of Chennai, another dead man floating off the coast of Nigeria. I've heard a lot of weird stories from my senior officers, but the scariest was the rogue waves. These are freaking huge waves coming out of nowhere, even if the sea looks calm. Imagine you're out in the middle of the ocean, the skies are clear, there are no storms, the sea is calm, and then suddenly out of nowhere a 100-foot wave appears and smashes your ship. Story 11. Not at sea, but in a secluded estuary. Me and my dad were fishing the fork of a large estuary. So we're sitting on the boat, angled into some reeds to keep us ashore, and we see something floating towards us from the other side of the river. We found it weird. It was coming straight from that side of the land to ours until we realized what it was. We get up and realize it's a brown snake. Yep, brown snakes, one of the deadliest, meanest snakes in the world, are frigging swimming enthusiasts in their spare time. It came straight for our boat, poking its head up in what we can only imagine was a "yes, this is a thing" gesture. Halfway, it came right up beside our boat and into the reeds, at which point me and my father were in the process of getting someplace else. Not weird nor at sea, but messed up nonetheless. Story 12. Was sailing a few miles off the coast of Rhode Island, Connecticut on a 33-foot sloop when a very large submarine surfaced with a roar about 100 yards east of us. I suddenly felt like I was sitting in a bathtub by comparison. It submerged after perhaps a minute, making me think it had been an illusion, but there were 4 of us on the boat. Another time while sailing, I saw a fin stick out of the water. I recognized it from pictures in books, flopped over slightly at top. I grabbed my mask and dove in and swam up to it. It was an ocean sunfish, very rare in New England waters. My friends were crapping themselves thinking it was a shark. The fish was enormous, very bizarre looking, and had to be 600 pounds or more. Very slow moving. We were eyeball to eyeball for several minutes. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.